One of the questions I'm most frequently asked is, what is the cost of living in Panama? Well, that's an extraordinarily difficult question to answer. Basically because you're different from every other person that comes down here, every person who lives here. Your style of life, what it is you like, what you don't like, everything figures into cost of living. I can give you an example or two, but I'll talk about it in more general terms after that because that's really the best way to focus on it. But let's talk in terms of electricity. I have an apartment here where I'm sitting right at the moment. It's 144 square meters, about 1,500 square feet. I have a couple bedrooms, a couple baths. I have a little tiny place that's an office with a half bath associated with it. I have a living area that includes both dining and living space and a kitchen. Now, and a balcony. I don't have to worry about the balcony when it comes to electricity. I would pay about $145 a month for my electricity with an exemption, not exemption, a partial exoneration for age. I'd work out to about $120 to $125. Now, I could cut that substantially by simply cutting my air conditioning use. But I use it a lot, a lot more than many people do down here. I have it on in the bedroom every night. During the daytime, almost all the time, even though there are days when I really don't need it. But the truth is I sit in front of a computer in a little tiny office that has no air conditioning, and I have to keep it on in the living area so that it's cool enough for me to be comfortable with the computer. That's the real reason. If it wasn't for that, I would reduce my air conditioning use quite substantially. You can eliminate it completely, but then you're going to deal with mold, which in a humid climate, especially during the period when it is the rainy season, whatever, as it is now. So that's just something, another concern you have to have, but it's what people live with. So I don't consider this price considering how much I use the air conditioning, I don't consider it to be outrageously high at all in comparison to what I paid elsewhere. It may be for you or not. You have to make that sort of comparison. But if for someone else with an apartment twice the size, or the freestanding home that's twice the size, or has 2, 3, 4 people living, it's obviously going to be very different. So it only is an idea of what I might pay or do pay for you to compare against. Now, gasoline, another major expense for most people. Here the prices are more or less the same as they are in the U.S., very comparable. Most Americans come down and aren't surprised at all. They use the American gallon, so they're very comfortable with the pricing system and with the measurement. People from other countries, Europe in particular, find the gasoline is cheap, as they do when they go to the U.S. So that's just a general idea. In terms of supermarkets, we have everything under the sun. Panama has gone through a lot of economic growth over the last decade. You can go into supermarkets here, really very nice ones, as good as any I've ever been in the U.S., and you will find everything you can imagine. And no, I shouldn't say that. Of course not, everything you can imagine. But you can find 99% of what it is you want. But you're going to pay for it. These are really nice supermarkets, and the prices are not going to be that much different than they are in North America or Europe. They might be cheaper than in Europe for some things, but on the whole, it's comparable. However, nothing prevents me from simply going to a local market and purchasing fruits and vegetables, for example, much less expensively there than I do in the supermarket, and I do that, especially when I'm out in the countryside. So people living in the countryside, they can buy local produce. It certainly can have a substantial impact on their expenses. All these are factors. And what it all boils down to in the final analysis is that the best estimate that most people make is that you can live here for 30% less than you did when you were back home. Well, maybe so. But again, it depends on you. If you want what you had in Europe or in North America down here, then you're going to pay for it because it's going to have to be transported here. If you're willing to try the local equivalents, fine. I mean, that's one of the first things I did was just go to the stores and buy only things that were produced either in Panama or in one of our neighboring countries, Costa Rica, Colombia, predominantly. Ice cream, for example. It's a lot cheaper from those providers than it is having to buy American ice cream that's been shipped in a cold chain all the way down from the U.S. That saves money. Some of them I liked, some I didn't like. But most of the time, with the meat and the dairy products, I find the local very acceptable and sometimes preferable. As far as fruits and vegetables are concerned, really. I'm not about to buy much that's imported in that particular category. Meat, the beef here is tougher because they're grain-fed or raised on the fields, and they're less likely to use the hormone treatments that are used elsewhere. I can't say that for a fact for all of them, but there's no question about it. The meat here tastes more like it did 30 years ago in the U.S., so to speak. It's got more flavor to it. It can be tougher. It's not that expensive. When I get beef, which is not really all that frequently, I often get the filet. It's the most expensive cut they have, but it's very tender and it's very good. But most of the time I will be eating chicken and fish and pork, and these are very nice. I'm very satisfied with them. Perfectly happy with it. So the food costs, again, it depends. If you've got to live like you did back up there, wherever there is, you're going to pay for it. But if you relax and look around and find the local places people go to purchase things less expensively, you'll save a lot of money, and you'll find that a lot of local produce and local foods are every bit as good, and certainly the mangoes are a lot better here than they are in a supermarket up north, I can assure you that. And the wonderful part is they fall off the tree down the street, so I can get them free when it's in season. These are all the sorts of things that come involved in determining cost of living. The real truth of the matter is you can come down here and you can spend more money than you've ever spent in your life if you so desire. The things are here to be purchased. You can end up paying about the same as you did in the U.S., or you can pay substantially less than you did in the U.S. or Europe or Canada. But it really depends on you. So the cost of living is not going to be determined by Panama. It's going to be determined by you. That's an important factor to keep in mind.